In a land that feasted on fear, hidden where maps blurred into myth, there lay a village called Ashthorn. It clung to life deep within a forest, so old it no longer remembered the sun. Mist swirled through the trees like ghosts, half-formed, and the air always smelled faintly of smoke and damp earth. The village was named for the trees that encircled it like a curse. Ash-grey, skeletal things with bark as pale as bone and twisted branches that clawed at the sky. They never bore leaves, never bloomed, never fell, just stood, silent and scorched, as if the fire that birthed them still smoldered beneath their roots. No one had planted them. No one remembered when they'd first appeared, but everyone remembered the beast. He lived beyond the ash line, in a castle swallowed by ivy and shadow. Children were warned not to speak his name. Adults did not speak it at all. Only the castle was ever mentioned, and even then only in hushed tones. It was said the structure was alive, its halls shifting like breath, its stones humming with something old and watchful. It had no master, only a monster. Horned, hulking, wrapped in fur the color of soot. A thing of nightmare. Years ago, he had taken a woman from the village. She had walked into the woods under a moonless sky and never returned. That woman had been Belle's mother. Belle was a child when it happened, too young to understand, old enough to remember the silence that followed, the way her father unraveled in pieces, the way the village changed overnight. No one would say her mother's name. No one would look Belle in the eye for long. Her father died the winter after her mother vanished. Some said it was grief. Others whispered of poison, of deals broken and debts unpaid. Belle was left behind. The village raised her, but only in the way a barn might house a stray animal, sheltered, fed, tolerated. They clothed her. They taught her to read, but they never gave her answers. Only stories and warnings about monsters and sacrifices. Every few years, when the wind turned sharp and strange, when the ash trees moaned like old wounds reopening, the council would gather in secret. A name would be chosen. A girl, always young, always quiet, would be led to the edge of the woods. They called it an offering, though they never used the word death. The girl would walk into the forest alone, bearing bread, a lantern, and a name they refused to write down. None ever came back. Belle watched them go, watched the way the village mourned them, with smiles and songs and never a single question. She grew into a woman under that silence, sharp-eyed, slow to speak, drawn to shadows. She haunted the dusty corners of the library. She read of curses and creatures, of vanished kingdoms and broken gods. The other girls said she was strange, said she looked at the world like it was lying to her. They weren't wrong. Belle wasn't curious, she was waiting. When the wind changed again and the trees began to whisper, the council gathered. Belle arrived before they could choose. "I will go," she said. The room went still. No gasps, no arguments. Just a quiet sort of relief, the kind that looked too practiced. They gave her what they always gave: a lantern, a satchel of food, a map worn thin at the creases. They told her nothing, not where to walk, not what to say. They did not give her a choice. She left at dawn. The forest swallowed her whole. It was colder than it should have been. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of rot and something older. The trees leaned too close, their branches murmuring secrets in voices too soft to catch. Paths forked and rejoined with no logic. Stones shifted beneath her boots. The map was useless. Still, she walked. She did not flinch at the bones hung from branches like wind chimes. Did not pause when her breath turned black in the cold. She moved forward, always forward. At dusk, the castle appeared. It rose from the mist like a memory, its towers cracked and leaning, its windows dark as open mouths. Vines gripped the walls in a lover's hold, blooming with flowers that reeked of blood and ash. There were no guards, no gates, just a door, open, waiting. She entered, and the beast stepped from the dark. His growl was low, almost reluctant. He was massive, yes, horned and clawed, with fur like scorched velvet and eyes that burned gold in the gloom. But it wasn't the size of him that made Belle's heart lurch. It was his eyes. They weren't cruel, weren't kind either. They were tired. "Another girl," he said, voice rough with disuse, like gravel soaked in honey. "They sent another one." Belle didn't scream, didn't run. "I'm not afraid of you," she said. He tilted his head, puzzled. "You should be..." The castle became her cage and her refuge. It shifted when she wasn't looking. Halls stretched or vanished. Windows showed skies that didn't belong to this world. The air thrummed with old magic, the kind that remembers. But she wasn't confined. The beast gave her a room, books, time. He dined with her each night, though he never ate. He asked about Ashthorn, about the world beyond the forest. Sometimes he told stories too, strange tales with kernels of truth buried deep in the roots. Belle listened, not because she trusted him, but because he was the only one who ever told her anything. And slowly, something shifted. She found herself waiting for him in the library, watching the clock for when he'd appear. She tried not to laugh at his dry humor, but did anyway. She asked questions she never thought she'd say aloud. And sometimes he looked at her like she was the last light left in the world. She tried not to think of it. She tried not to feel. But one night, he showed her a music box, hand-carved, its melody delicate and sad. She froze. "That's my mother's lullaby. I found it in the ruins of a cottage, years ago," he said. "I liked the sound." Her mother's cottage had burned when she was 5. Later, he took her to the heart of the castle, a sealed chamber wrapped in thorns and bone. Inside, a pedestal held a rose beneath glass, its petals blackened at the edges. It pulsed faintly, like it was breathing. "If the flower is destroyed," he said, "I die." She stared, and he stared at her. "I believe you can save me," he said quietly. "I think I love you." Belle smiled and said nothing. That night, while the castle slept, she rose. Her footsteps were soft, her lantern dim. The rose room opened for her as if it had been waiting. She lifted the glass and crushed the rose beneath her heel, slowly, without mercy. The castle screamed, walls cracked, floors buckled, vines shriveled and snapped. The beast's roar echoed through every stone and corridor. But Belle ran. She did not look back. Ashthorn greeted her return with cheers and flowers. They called her a hero, a savior. Children danced in masks shaped like the beast, laughing as they mimicked his howl. They crowned her with laurels. The mayor declared a feast day. Every year on the anniversary of her return, they would burn a wooden effigy of the beast and cheer as it fell. They called her savior, the brave Belle, the one who ended the curse. And she smiled. She gave speeches. She let them carve her likeness into stone. But at night, she dreamed of a quiet voice in the dark saying her name like it meant something. Then one day, a traveler came. An old woman with silver eyes and a thorn-shaped pin. She handed Belle a letter, sealed in red wax. It bore her mother's name. My beloved daughter, if you're reading this, then you ended the curse. The beast you destroyed was not a monster. He was a boy named Corvin. Your father and I knew him once, before the village chose him. Ashthorn was dying, crops failing, no visitors. So the council came to me. They begged for magic, for a story the world would fear and worship. They asked me to curse someone, a boy they could trap in a castle, tell tales about, lure travelers to see. And I did it. I cursed Corvin. I twisted him into a creature the world would pity and fear. And I watched as Ashthorn grew rich on that horror. They told you I died, but I remained, hidden, bound to the curse, waiting for someone who could love him despite what he'd become. I hoped that someone would be you, but the village never wanted the curse broken. They wanted the monster to remain. They used you, Belle, as they used me, as they used him. Belle's hands trembled. The world around her grew quiet. She looked out at Ashthorn, the polished stones, the painted homes, the statues of her holding the broken rose. It was all built on a lie. She had loved him, and she had destroyed him. Some say she walked into the forest and was never seen again. Some say the ash trees began to bloom after that night. But most believe she stayed in the village, smiling silent, her heart full of thorns. And when children asked about the castle, she only said, "Be careful which stories you're willing to believe." Thank you for joining us in the world of Twilight Fables. If you enjoyed this tale and want to hear more stories like this, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more.